Development Hot Seat. I'm your host, Andy Storch, and I'm excited that you're joining me today for another great episode and conversation to help you up your game and improve your capabilities in the world of talent development. And today we are talking all about e-learning and specifically reimagining e-learning through AI and how AI is changing how we're thinking about e-learning and powering industry-specific personalization at scale. My guest today is Shrikant Pattathil, who is a strategic advisor to many organizations and an avid speaker in the information technology and e-learning community. He also serves as president and CTO of the Harbinger Group, where he has worked for more than 25 years to help customers in the HR and learning space solve product integration and automation challenges, as well as building innovative products and solutions, transforming the way people work and learn. Shrikant has been recognized for his contributions to e-learning specifications, creating the offline content player, a unique product from Harbinger used for e-learning in disconnected mode. And I am interested to get into our topic today and learn more about AI and e-learning. So Shrikant, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks, Andy. It's a pleasure being here on the podcast, and look forward to this interaction with you.
Yeah, likewise. You have been with Harbinger Group, you said, for more than 25 years. We were chatting before, and you said you primarily have a technology background. So one question I always like to start with is, how did you get into the learning space in the first place?
Well, yeah, that's a very interesting question. So, Harbinger as a company, our core focus has been, to be at the intersection of people transformation and organization transformation and so forth. And that's the reason we kind of align to HR and learning very closely right from our inception days. One of the first things that we did was created a product that will make learning more engaging. You can remember the CBT Pro kind of days where you know uh, computer based training was very static, and we made it more animated, user friendly and so forth. And that shaped the company at that point of time. And we thought, and as technology has evolved, be it the internet and the cloud and all of that, learning has been transforming and changing, uh, the way we consume it, the way we interact, the way we engage. So it's been always a continuous kind of a progress for us as well, for both me as well as the organization. So and it's a very fulfilling thing at the end of the day, if you can enable organization and people to grow and perform
Yeah.
better in their jobs, in addition to building cool technology. That's an additional satisfaction that we get.
Right. You think about this idea of e-learning, learning at your desk, at your computer, on your own time. It's sort of was innovative many, many years ago. You mentioned being in the space 25 years. I imagine you have seen a lot of change in this space over the course of that 25 years. I'm curious, from your standpoint, what are the major changing points? How has e-learning evolved over the last couple decades? And I'm sure that's accelerated over the last couple of years with the advent of AI, which we'll talk more about.
Yeah, I think initially the challenge with e-learning was, we were competing against instructor-led modes, right? And that used to be a more powerful way of communicating, messaging, and training and so forth. Um, when software started becoming, more and more prevalent and used, uh, how to transform and make it instructionally sound, and give the same quality the way an instructor would teach something, was the primary goal in the early 90s. And make it, because now we had computers, so you could add animations and you could do things where the instructor couldn't go. So combining those kind of things were the challenge. Then came the challenge of, you know you, when we used to put a lot of interaction and interact and make these uh, content, it wouldn't get delivered because people didn't have the strong connections those back in
Right.
those
You
days.
wouldn't have the bandwidth to be able to deliver it, or you couldn't get it on the disk to get to them. Like it's too much data.
Yeah, so the initial part, making it work online, offline, and seamlessly, the rich content delivered, making it trackable, so that because people are doing this remotely, so you have no clue whether people really consumed what they say they consumed, or they just sat in front of the computer and it just ran by itself. We don't know. So those kind of challenges were there, and we were trying to, as we make it more and more scalable and accessible, also kind of making it more measurable and making it more effective was a challenge. Then I think once the internet problem was solved and the bandwidth problem was solved, I think there was challenge of uh, the number of applications and the number of tools and the number of ways you could do it, and you know making it easier, either for the enterprise or the people who are building learning, or delivering, how they interoperate and integrate and seamlessly work together, right? And so those kind of challenges have been there for the last 10-15 years. Then there was a time where Adobe Flash was very popular, many people build content there. Then suddenly it went out of, Adobe decided that they would not support it anymore, so everything kind of transitioned to HTML and video and stuff like that. So there was a huge you know change
Hmm.
and transformation needed around that time. And now I think the big problem that technology is bringing in today, a big problem or the big opportunity, whichever way you look at it, is with the AI kind of way of doing things. Are there more possibilities the way we learn? Are there uh, more engagement that we can deliver, better outcome measurements we can deliver? So the possibilities are quite uh, out there, but how to do it and how to do it at scale, um, and make sure things don't break, is something that, as technology providers or vendors or service providers, we need to think and innovate, so that the experience and overall outcome that organizations looking from learning or skilling and so forth
Right.
delivered.
Best possible value and experience, and making sure that it's smooth, it works, you can deliver it. And there's a lot of different ways you can go now, making sure it's the most effective. Curious, just looking at your things online, you talk about the industrialization
Mhm.
of e-learning. Curious, what does that mean, and how is it different from how most people think about e-learning?
I mean, industrialization as a concept, we coined it probably about 6 months or 8 months back. It probably was there, but we coined it in the in the scope and volume that we are thinking of, where when we were looking at it from a content production perspective. So, and in earlier days when we talked about industrialization, or we talked about, oh, are we going to do it using templates, and are we going to do it with some static set of images and so forth. So however, uh, the way we are looking at it from an industrialization perspective today, or we're defining it, is is more in the context of a hyper personalization. So for example, if you had a catalog where you were delivering leadership content, and it was done for one industry, say retail, and now you're selling it across industries, like you're going to manufacturing, healthcare, and they're consuming the same content. Now, to change the whole content in the context of examples, scenarios, visuals, terminology, to resonate with that segment, was a huge undertaking. Matlab, it will cost millions of dollars, right? And time as well. And if you had only 10 or 15 customers of that segment, you probably just told them that, this leadership content, after all, what's is just consume it. Right?
Hmm.
However, today, with AI, what we could possibly do, and we've done that in some, is create a whole smart factory of how this content is kind of assembled. So where we take the raw instructional I mean, we take the existing content, take the raw instructional material out of it, and then adaptively transform it in the context of the industry, in the context of the learner, in the context of, what complex, concepts you're teaching, specific to those industries, specific to those cultures, if you will. And and do that at a very reasonable cost, and in very reasonable time. So therefore, what you're driving is personalization that's industry specific, uh, at volumes that probably were very difficult to achieve earlier.
Mm. Um, go back here. Shrikant, I know you work with technology providers, implementers, with big companies as well, and you've probably seen lots of different implementations over the years of e-learning. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see companies making when looking to add or implement some type of e-learning, and what are the solutions or the ways to avoid making those mistakes?
uh, Mostly what I see as I wouldn't call them mistakes,
Okay.
right? It's more like when you're designing content and when you're building or deploying e-learning. Uh, Most of us do it in the context of uh, what we know, and at that point of what demographic of users you're catering to, right? Uh, and then we try to measure it, and mostly what happens is with a certain group or a certain type of deployment, it works seamlessly. And or when we see is like when users change over the years or groups change over the years, the effectiveness kind of goes down and down. So we have no form of organizing our content in such a way that is adaptable to different users and different profiles and so forth. So that's one. The second problem is, of course, how the modalities in how you're delivering things. Um, in most of the cases, we just think of one dimensional way of delivering the content or the learning, and we don't think about how the learner is going to kind of consume it, both in terms of modalities also, and how technology wise how you are making it easy or accessible,
Mm.
uh, and so forth. Translations also, right? I mean, we kind of do translations to one or two languages, and then leave the remaining users out in the dark.
Mm.
So some of those inherent problems is what we have seen in terms of delivering effectiveness. And finally, measuring and interacting with the learners, and not just the learners, but in their jobs, how you are measuring whether they were skilled or reskilled or transformed. That sort of
Mm.
disconnection between various systems um, is also a challenge, in terms of, and we think in future we should be able to overcome them, yeah, or at least reduce them to manageable. Right now, I think most of the complaints that CLOs or learners have is that they learn something, but they don't know whether they effectively learned it or used it.
Mm.
There's no measurement out there to kind of be certain.
Yeah, has this been effective? Did it actually make it a difference? And do we even know how would we define that, and how are we measuring the impact that something making, right? It's the same challenge with almost any learning
Mhm.
program that we bring in. What's our main objective? How are we measuring the impact of this? Like, what value is it providing to the business?
Yeah. And typically, what happens is you put a lot of focus on the LMS or the learning content, or something of that sort, but holistically you don't look at your learning problem when you try to bring in new things or technology or changes. So so I think that's also an additional kind of when
Yeah.
you buy, build, or implement something, you have to look at the complete end-to-end business and then do things, and mostly then you will get like a good ROI on it, rather than just
Right.
changing the platform or buying some new content. It doesn't work mostly.
Let's say, like, putting end results aside, that adoption is one of your most important care abouts for this. What have you seen in terms of best practices for getting good adoption when implementing a new implementing a new e-learning program? I'd imagine that obviously the quality of the learning, the importance of the content, and then there's the user experience as well, which is in some ways under the control of if you're bringing a vendor like Harbinger or someone else in to provide content. But there's also the integration with the LMS or the user interface of the company. What have you seen as far as best practices for companies implementing e-learning to make sure that people do indeed go and use it because they've got a million things going on?
Yeah. Well, what I feel is like any other industry or technology, people, just stay within their roles. So, for example, if you're a content creator, you're just a content creator. If you're LMS administrator, you're just a LMS administrator. You are, when you're thinking of solving or deploying an e-learning program, as a team, you probably need to understand how each of these things come together and deliver uh, the learning outcome effectively. And whether you're a vendor or whether you're a internal team, having connection with all the aspects, right from content creation to content delivery, right, and measurement. If you consider all these aspects in all your decision making, in how you're organizing the content to how you're deploying it, what medias you're using, uh, if you have a fair understanding of all of this and then you're building it, you you are much better. And sometimes when we come in as vendor and when we only creating courses, we don't even know what LMS they're going to use.
Mm.
Is- so we have worked with like almost 50 plus LMSs, but once we know the LMS, many a times we can even, when we ask the content team, they say, oh, that's part of the technology team, we just have to create these courses. As long as there's com or AICC or something, they'll figure out the rest. We don't
Yeah.
need to worry about it. The course
Right.
has to be engaging, the course has to be, but we don't know how, at what parts you're measuring it, at what depth you're kind of uh, allowing the LMS to kind of interact with the content and so forth. So it becomes you do these things in bits and pieces, and then they don't stick together. So
Right. Well, yeah, then there's the internal side of making sure that people are aware of the content and that it's easy to access, going back to the LMS, like you mentioned.
true. Yeah, and I mean, once you're putting into the LMS, like if you build a giant course, like which is like 1 hour long, and you're not breaking it down, thinking that that's what the LMS will do. But if the LMS has ability to split it across 10 modules, and then within the LMS you can create like 4 or 5 different learning paths out of it. Now, unless those things are specified, you can't really, or sometimes what you do is you do all those learning paths in the content, but it's not there in the LMS. So if somebody has to come to the content to see all these learning paths and creation. So where to do it and how to do it based on what LMS you have, what technology you're using, it's the decision and the design could be very different. And mostly what people follow is into a repetitive cycle of, this works for us, just do it and finish the work on and deliver at this
Mm.
fast.
So I'm curious, Shrikant, what you're seeing as far as how AI has been changing e-learning over, we'll say, the last couple of years, and how AI is helping scale content adoption as well.
So I gave you, I mean, we started with the industrialization sort of an example. So what AI is enabling or probably promising that we can do better is, rather than organizing our content in some sort of a static form, right, we can consider our learning like a knowledge base. And it could be delivered in multiple ways, like be it a course or a video, PowerPoint, audio clip, or whatever, modality it is. and also delivered through like a coaching mechanism or delivered through a scenario mechanism, or just a learning path traditional mechanism. So, and doing all of this dynamically and at runtime is is becoming more and more possible. So it's like you can do this with like a 1 day or a 2 day notice, or even in some systems even real time. But I'm just saying that, assuming that there's a human behind the scenes who's making sure that it all is instructionally sound and
Hmm.
working well, so the package, what you're finally delivering to the end learner is validated and is. But the possibility of curating, configuring, and building and assembling things uh, as personalized as possible for the end customer is possible now. And you can do it at scale as well and relatively cheaper. It's just
Yeah.
that you need to build these workflows and you need to build these tools within existing platforms and take users through some sort of an adoption journey, if you will. Because if you throw all of this right now to the end customer or the end user, they'll get confused.
Yeah.
But so the onus on platform companies or vendors is to, you know slowly take the users along those path, not like transform the whole thing in one go. That's what I feel. But
Yeah, so you have to be really strategic about how you're designing a learning experience. I think we all know that of our listeners who've been in this space for quite some time. We have learning designers and many other people in the L&D world that know, okay, we have to be really strategic about how we're designing an experience. We want to make it really engaging. We want to make sure that it addresses the behavior change that we want, the outcomes that we want. Where does AI come in to help us with that, to make this process easier so that we can either save time or make it more effective? And I would imagine there's different types of tools that we can be thinking about learning using.
yeah, I think so. What I'll tell you what Harbinger is doing. One is on the content creation side, right? How to make sure that the whole content creation process, right from outlining to storyboarding to various other like image creations and so forth, AI being used as a co-pilot to kind of help make the content even better, even give users or reviewers more options of doing or thinking differently about the same type of content. So that's one thing. The second important thing is, using various tools that other platform companies are providing, and building workflows for various kind of, like I said, scenario based learning, or uh, job role specific training, or skilling based on exactly the profile that you are in, to the profile that you want to go to, which is not like a generic skilling saying that okay, from one job role to another job role, but it's very specific to what you know, what you don't know, and then reskilling exactly from that. So building those workflows in those applications, building those inherent capturing those inherent knowledges, and then making sure that content is used in the right way at right places to orchestrate all of this and deliver this is what we think will be beneficial.
Yeah.
And the other point that I wanted to just add there was AI and the tool sets that you are creating need to be flexible and tuned to your specific organization's needs. Um, and it also shouldn't be like what we have seen is like, if you're creating of learning, like all your instructional designers or graphic people are going and using their own AIs and building something. But if you want to scale how things are delivered and be consistent in your delivery in terms of what customers will get, you probably need to create platforms and processes and workflows that will make sure that the output is consistent when you use AI.
Mm.
And that's where the engineering or the thinking or innovation and process definition and all will will
Yeah.
need to fit in.
And where does, if we think about using AI in designing and engaging outcomes, how does AI personalization improve our learner engagement and especially our knowledge retention?
So uh, when we are kind of designing e-learning moving forward, or even today, one of the things that we are thinking of is how granular can we go to capture the user preferences. And when we capture the user preferences to a granular level, can we tweak the instructional design uh, on basis of that granularity? So because, like I said, the AI is assembling the content as dynamic as possible. So to make sure, because if I am viewing a 2-minute video or a 5-minute video, if it is personalized for my specific need in my specific language with my specific examples,
Hmm.
my specific job profile details, I'll find it much more engaging, not much more engaging, but I'll be able to relate and explain and use it much more efficiently. So the same content could be the same compliance content or the same leadership content or the same, as a theory that you would teach when adapted to your specific profile and context and culture and job, uh, will stay um, much more. Uh, I mean, the even though we all know why we watch TikTok and some of those other things, right? The
Yeah.
recommendations that keep coming are so connected with our behaviors and our
Right.
liking, that that same thing needs to happen with content, uh, and therefore making sure even the assembly and creation, because we don't have a user base that is like creating this content at scale. So
Right.
we probably need to figure out how to assemble and deliver it at runtime, as close to runtime as possible, so that it can be delivered that way.
Okay. And one of the things that makes e-learning so valuable compared with, say, instructor-led training is it's a lot more scalable, right? Or it's easier to scale across an organization. So if you think about scaling across the enterprise, what are some of the operational or maybe workflow changes that are needed to, as you said, industrialize or personalize the learning at scale across, hundreds or thousands of people?
Uh, yeah, I think with AI, one big challenge that is going to come is the amount of AI processing and costs that may be involved if you want to build dynamically at
Mm.
runtime and so forth, right? And for every user you want to do it, it may not be practical. Because if users are not paying for that, like for example, they're not paying for that additional AI feature, they're just wanting to use it like a traditional course or traditional LMS the way they've been using.
Hmm.
uh, I think companies will have some sort of issues as to how, while they like all this, how to push and make it really make it viable from a business standpoint. So there
Mm.
are some challenges, and of course we know all the security and hallucination related risks also that come in. So you need to have the proper guardrails and stuff in place, and when you start putting all of that, then the scale becomes, you have to balance the scale performance sort of stuff.
Mm.
So I feel AI does help us do things at scale and give us a lot of opportunities. However, the challenge is going to be how do we take this to some lab based work, to actual production, to the scale
Mm.
that today how e-learning is delivered. Like you can say, okay, it completely disrupted the instructor-led model, and it's now 90% is all e-learning now. Now the whole personalization aspect and the AI related making e-learning or accessible like a personal coach to you, for your specific needs will require a lot of back-end engineering and scale and guardrailing and so forth. And whether, how the cost will be passed on to the end customer, and how what's going to be the platform company's challenges and all of that. So I think that only time will probably will be able to, but there has to be a balance. Otherwise, it'll become like, oh, you want to do all this, but it's not commercially viable. So
Hmm.
so I think that balance, I think the more and more it is synchronous, the adoption will be faster. Otherwise there will be always this, oh, we want to release all of this, we want to charge like hundreds of dollars for this, but
Hmm.
customers are not willing to pay for it. So it'll go kind of in that kind of back
Yeah.
and forth. So I
Okay.
hope, as the system scales and as performance becomes less of a challenge and guardrails and all of things are set, we are only there to solve how to make it much more better rather than.
Right. Well, these things are changing all the time, and that leads me to the next question I was going to ask you, which is about the future of AI powered learning, and what do you see as coming next? How is this evolving for content adoption, or full fledged learning experience design? Where do you see things going from here?
uh, I think the future AI sort of a pipeline or whatever, or experience, if you will, is going to be uh, where I feel AI kind of will sit at the center of almost everything, like right from creation to delivery.
Mhm.
Um, mm, However the process may be might take time. Like initially it may happen more in the creation side and less on the delivery side, because on the delivery side your users have to undergo training in terms of how to use some of these ways of modalities of training, how to measure it and how to deliver it. So probably the initial efficiencies would be to create these learning paths, curate resources, generate activities, and coaching interactions and so forth, like on the creation side. And on the delivery side, as people get more and more hooked on to this way of doing things, like how
Mhm.
social media has happened and so forth, and AI becoming like almost like a seamless experience, and the whole coaching and the new way of learning becoming a way of life.
Yeah.
uh, I think the everything probably will happen through some sort of an AI co-pilot sort of as assistant, if not like completely embedded in your learning. So
Right.
before you take some course, you would probably ask your assistant or your learning coach, is this the right module based on what I've learned, and how do I curate it to make it much more better, and so
Hmm.
forth. And then you know then go ahead with that whole experience of taking it, and then again engaging in saying that what have I learned, how. So all of those things, how we do today vis-a-vis how we will do it in the future, will probably be a lot different, probably 3 to 5 years down the line, if the technology and the direction continues towards becoming more and more AI centric.
Yeah. So we could see a future where we all have a sort of a personal learning assistant that knows our experience, our certifications, our qualifications, the classes we've taken before, where we might want to be going in our career, what what classes or learning we may need to do next to help us get there. I feel like we're not that far off, right? A lot of companies are implementing these AI powered talent marketplaces where you can go in and say, okay, I work in marketing now. I want to get to the director level, or I want to
Yeah.
change and work in finance or HR. What do I need to do? But we're not far off from everybody potentially, if they wanted it and the organization were to implement it, to have some type of learning assistant to help guide you in creating a truly personalized learning path.
Yeah, I agree. And I think earlier what used to happen is, it was very, unless you organized information in such a way, or you had the skill set measured to the very deep level, because these platform worked based on rules. you had to put in all that data and infrastructure behind to be able to do that. Now with, you know, it being able to read off a resume, create your skill sets, create your, you know, journey maps based on that, uh, and check what your assessments were and so forth, it is becoming much more dynamic and possible in organizations or situations also where the information doesn't exist in a standard schema. So so doing some of these things like having a personal coach is becoming more democratic than what it used to be a few years down the line. And ability to get there for all organizations is much faster now, rather than, you know,
Mm.
unless we do all these things, we implement all these systems, we change everything, we are never going to
Yeah.
get there. So that part probably, you know, uh, is a good thing. But still, I think from a user's perspective, to be operating and thinking in that sort of a modality
Yeah.
uh, will will take time, because of course the systems and things can change, but
Yeah.
people still have to be, you know, cool with working with a learning assistant and, you know, using it effectively and, you know, doing all
Yeah.
that. So that I feel is a will take a while, but definitely technology wise, um, it's definitely a possibility and can be enabled in almost all the platforms and all the organizations very
Right.
quickly.
Shrikant, we've covered a lot of ground with this, talking all about the evolution of e-learning and how AI is changing things now, and how you're thinking about personalization and scaling. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you're especially excited about or passionate about with regards to how you or your organization are creating, leveraging, or how you see organizations using e-learning these days?
uh, yeah, I think one thing using AI over the last year and a half, what or embedding it into many of our platforms solutions, excuse me. So what I feel is, uh, if you leave AI, especially in an organizational context or in a learning context, to the individual to use it, either while creating content or while consuming content, to do it in their own ways, you will not get a consistent feedback or consistent experience, because
Mm.
people are at different levels and different adoption, you know, journeys. So you need to, whether you are a CLO or whether you are a technology platform company trying to do this, if you want to do it at scale and if you want to do it consistently, and you want to get consistent outcomes, then you need to probably create and build the workflows in such a way that, irrespective of what the level of AI proficiency of the user or the builder is, your tool or your workflow is making sure that the output that is coming out, uh, or the outcome that it is driving, is consistent. And therefore, you are not going to go back and iterate or train every single individual and bring them to a certain literacy level before your application or content or platform becomes effective.
Mm.
So I think that is not easy. It requires more than just creating a piece of content or building a tool and releasing it in the market. It requires, you know, thinking through the whole workflow and orchestration and, you know, use cases, and putting the guardrails and plans together, so
Right.
that um, you the people dependency and their knowledge is kind of taken out of it as much as possible.
Okay. And last thing, we're just a couple minutes left. How does your organization, Harbinger Group, partner with clients? And you told me you work with three different types of clients, right? Providers, as well as large companies.
Yeah, so we work with technology vendors in the HR and learning space, like helping them build the technology platform, be it their content platforms or their LMS platforms and all the integrations and so forth. And there, you know, whatever AI first design and thinking and workflows that they're thinking of. I think we are kind of enabling that. We have our own frameworks and systems that accelerate that whole development. Then, like we mentioned to you, we also work with the e-learning catalog companies, helping them transform their catalogs. That's where some of this industrialization thing comes in place, where you
Hmm.
know taking a catalog that was built for a certain industry, certain domain, and scaling it, and making it available to learners in different domains and industries very quickly. And thirdly, the enterprise, in terms of adopting whether this is platforms or content to their own needs, and then building their own ecosystem of custom stuff that will further accelerate their journey. So it's almost like all these constituents of vendors, catalog companies, and the enterprises,
Yeah.
helping them transform how they are working and learning. That's our thing. And right now it's all with AI infused in it. So
Right. Oh, I bet it is, and probably more and more every day. Really cool. Okay, so for anybody listening that wants to get in touch with you to find out more about the work you're doing, how you're doing these things, or learn more about Harbinger Group, where's the best place for them to go?
they can reach us at info at harbingergroup.com, or they can also write to me at Shrikant at harbingergroup.com in case they want to reach out to me. And I'm sure LinkedIn details or whatever we can
Yeah,
put.
you're on LinkedIn as well. I know we're connected or getting connected on there. So if you're interested in upping your game with e-learning or connecting Harbinger with the provider you're working with, reach out to Shrikant. We'll put the links in the show notes. Shrikant, thank you for coming on and sharing all this with us today. It's been really interesting for me because I work with so many big companies. I work with so many people in talent development. I don't often get to dig as much into the technology side to find out what people are doing, especially how they're leveraging AI, which is something I'm endlessly curious about. So appreciate you coming on and looking forward to talking with you more in the future.
Sure. Thanks, Andy. It's always a pleasure connecting, and yeah, wish you a good time. Thank you for inviting me.